Good evening from Vietnam. Good afternoon to you, Maria. Thanks a lot for spending your afternoon to join our program to share your amazing journey to our audience. And on behalf of the listeners everywhere, please, we want to say thank you to you.
Thank you, and it's an absolute pleasure to be in Vietnam.
You have a new friend, new family, right? Put it on your bucket list. And
I will.
We've been seeing a lot. Yeah, we've seen a lot of people from all over the world coming here and having a lot of coffee together, a lot of tea together. Why not you and us, right?
Good plan.
Okay. Yeah, and for a little taste of our culture, Maria, it is very honor for the people here if they can have you to share a little bit of who you are and the work you do. Would you please do that honor for us?
Yes, I'd be delighted. Thank you for the opportunity. So my name is Maria Franzoni, which is an Italian name. So if I was going to give you my proper name, it's Maria Luisa Antonella Franzoni. So there you go. What we're talking about here today, I think, is mainly my work in the world of speaking. So I started in this industry in 1998, and until 2021, I spent my time booking speakers as an agent and running my own speaker bureau as well for 14 of those years. And I was working globally, so with speakers internationally and with clients internationally. And for the last 4 years, we're now in November 2025 as we're speaking, I've been working with speakers, teaching them what we knew and what we know in speaker bureaus to help them be more bookable and charge higher fees.
Wow.
That's it in a nutshell.
So your name is Maria Luenella Franzoni.
Maria Luisa Antonella Franzoni. That's why I use just Maria, and that's why we call you Ha, right? We make our name easy. Yeah.
See, your name is long but you short it to Maria in short, right? It's like your amazing journey that it's been long with a lot of beautiful things, and then you introduced to us in less than 1 minute, Maria. And that is not fair for our audience. And I told you before we had this conversation is that we're going to travel time. We're going to understand more about the journey. And we have people to understand, the transformative moment that made in you to do this work. Okay? So how does time travel sound to you?
Listen, if you can make me younger, that'll be fantastic. But can I keep my knowledge? I'll keep my knowledge, but I'll go younger. That would be amazing.
You keep anything and you are always young, okay? All right, I'll lead the way. So when I was born in the middle of the country in Vietnam called Da Nang City, and it's a very small town that's got destroyed a lot of times because of the wars that happened in this country. So my city was poor. I was born in a very poor family. One night we had electricity, the next night we did not. So my dream about my future is I wanted to become an astronaut so badly, Maria. I wanted to go to the moon and see things how bright it is up there. But life took me to different directions. And so I want to know, Maria, when she was little, what was her first dream about the work that she's going to do, or how she going to become when she getting older?
Well, do you know what? I always loved business. My father was in business, and he was actually a very good salesman and then became a director. So I was always interested in selling, doing business, doing deals. And so, my little sister was playing with dolls and playing with dressing up. And I had a little cash register and I had a little book and I was selling products to people and I had little, monopoly money and things like that. So I was always interested. I've always loved business. It's really strange, isn't it, for a child? But that was the thing that fascinated me, and that's always. I've always been fascinated by it, always interested in it. I'm going to have to say something to you about astronauts, actually, coming back a bit nearer into the future. Okay. When I joined the world of speaker bureaus, that my first boss said to me, "Who would you most like to meet?" And I went back to my earliest memory, and my earliest memory of being allowed to stay up and watch television and watch the news was when Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. So my answer was, I want to meet Neil Armstrong. And you're going to be very jealous because I've met and worked with Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, also several other astronauts too, whose names have gone for me now because I have a terrible memory. But I've met probably 5 of the astronauts who have walked on the moon. Isn't that amazing? Out of 12.
Wow. So you must meet the Charlie Duke then.
No.
Because you already shared Neil Armstrong, right? So when Neil was on the moon trying to land, he communicated back on Earth, right? And down in the command center down on Earth, there's a gentleman. His name is Charlie Duke, and he's the one that responded from Earth back to him. Years later, Charlie became the youngest man who walked on the moon out of the 12 person. My wife and I, we interviewed him. My wife and I, we interviewed his wife. My wife and I, we got them to do a lot of like speakings for our community here in this beautiful country also. So Maria, I think that the world is beautiful beyond our imagination. You know, thanks for bringing that, you know, like the story of Neil Armstrong up.
Isn't that fantastic? That's wonderful. Yeah, we're very lucky actually in our lives to have been able to meet these incredible people. And this is, and I know I'm back in the present day, but this is the thing that I love most about this industry, is the opportunity to meet the most incredible people.
And like you say earlier, we travel to the present time a little too fast. So we need to adjust the timing again, okay? So bring me to one of the night that little girl, Maria, playing with the cash register, right? And think about her future becoming a salesperson. And I think the selling world is huge for her. So I'm just curious to know, what did she think about, you know, when she grew up becoming a salesperson? How is it going to look like?
It wasn't necessarily being a salesperson; it was having my own business. It was, but selling for me was something that I wanted to learn because my father was the top salesman in his company, and as a result got promoted to be a director. And so it was, and he started. My mum and dad came to the UK, both of them separately, as Italians, as young people. They met here, and my father started as a tea boy, you know, in the company. He didn't speak very good English, and he worked his way up to then helping the salespeople, and then becoming a salesperson, and then all the way up to director. In those days, and it's changed now, of course, but you would start with a company and stay with them all your working life and go up the ladder. Now it's sort of everyone changes and they have portfolio careers. So I was very much influenced by my father, and my mother also influenced me because my mother, being Italian, she was one of 3. She was the oldest. She was a sister, and she had 2 brothers. And in Italy, after the age of 14, you pay for school. And her family didn't have the money to pay for 3 children to go to school. So they said, well, you're the girl, you're going to get married. So the boys they need to support the family. So they go to school, you stop at the age of 14, you become a maid, and you help run the house and you help other people. And my mother was furious because she's very, very intelligent. I'm very lucky that both my parents are still alive. 89 and 92, my parents are. And so when we were growing up, me and my sister, she instilled in us that independence, that financial independence, and learning, and to have a lifelong learning attitude. So she never wanted us to be in a situation where education was stopped for us. So they were a huge influence on me and my sister, both my mum and my dad. They wanted better for us than they had had.
Wow. When you have a chance to see your parents, please give them many kisses for us, okay? Because their wisdom is beautiful, you know, hardworking, and also create a condition, the environment to have their children to accelerate in life. Beautiful. I want to bring you to one of the nights, you know, when you do the imaginative, you know, selling or running your own business back then, and your parents come to the room and you talk to them, or they talk to you. They gave you some words of wisdom about, you know, the world of business, of running or operating this life. What did they give you that you still remember up to today, Maria?
I think it's the work ethic. You know, I've always worked and I've never expected anything from anybody. I haven't had a day where I've been unemployed. I haven't had a day where I've been very lucky in that. But even when I was a student and even when I was at school, I had a part-time job. Because I wanted to save, I wanted a car. The thing I really wanted was a car. And so as soon as I could, legally in those days, you were allowed to work from the age of 14. I had a couple of part-time jobs and I was earning as much money as I could. Not that I'd ever be able to, it'd take a long time, but my parents matched what I managed to save and got me a little old car, which was lovely. So I've always had that work ethic. I've learned that from them. And also, I suppose the other thing I've learned from them is that the family, the importance of family, and that's an Italian thing. I think we're still very close. I saw them at the weekend. I'll see them during the week. This week, I'll see them. I've stayed close to them. So yeah, the whole family unit is important for us, and that work ethic is important. That's what they gave me.
Beautiful. And in her imagination, what is the business that Maria is going to, run locally, regionally, or globally in the future?
Do you know, I didn't have an idea of what that business would be. I thought I'd be buying and selling some kind of products. And the thing is, when I finished my studies, the first job I had actually was in retail, and it was in sports retail. So we were selling sports shoes, sports equipment, sport clothing, and that was the very first shop that I ever managed was a sports shop. So that was great. So I started in retail when I started working, but I didn't have an idea of what it was. I just had this, I just wanted to be independent. I wanted to have a job. I wanted my own place. I wanted a car. And I just wanted to be, I was ready to grow up too early.
Be independent too early also, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful mix between what your mother had, in the independence when she was young, plus the hard work that your father also having that had been, wisely transferred to you. I can put it that way. Maria, so since when you started to join the speaking industry? On what occasion?
So I'd had several careers. So as I said, I started in retail management. I then went into management consultancy by accident, really, because they needed a fluent Italian speaker very quickly. It was an American company, and I wasn't qualified in terms of my experience, and I was quite young. But because they needed a fluent Italian speaker, I got the job, even though they interviewed me in French, because nobody spoke Italian, which was really strange. So I was interviewed in French for a position to speak Italian. And then after that, I went into general management. And so I had several careers before the speaking world. So I'm not that young, you see. That's why I wanted you to take me back and make me younger. So I started in the speaking industry in 1998. I had no idea that there was such a big industry. I had no idea about it at all. And I answered a very cryptic advert. The advert said, "Can you negotiate at senior level?" And I thought, I can do that. I've sat in front of CEOs as a management consultant, and I've told them that their business is wrong and what they're doing wrong. I've run a business as a general manager for big with lots of offices and lots of staff. So I thought I can do that. And I didn't realize that was going to be people like former heads of state or former CEOs who would be the speakers. And then on the other side, it would be really senior people who were booking those speakers. And when I discovered that, I just loved it. I loved it.
You just loved it. You're not like scared of it, but loved it.
Absolutely petrified. Absolutely. I was petrified because I thought, I don't know so many of these people that I'm going to be representing and selling, because there were so many people I had to learn about, especially the international names. International people, international famous authors, or international famous management gurus. All of these people, and others instead are people that I thought, gosh, I've admired this person. I've watched this person on television. I've read this person's books. I studied this person's books. And now I'm picking the phone up and speaking to them. So yes, to start off with, I was petrified. But what was fantastic was that we had we had about a month of training where we weren't allowed to speak to anybody. We weren't allowed to speak to a client. We weren't allowed to speak to a speaker. And there was a group of us who started together. And we were learning and learning and learning about the business, about the individuals. The advantage I had is because I'd had business experience before I started, it was easier for me to talk to clients and understand their problems. So that gave me a huge advantage. But, you know, the areas I struggled with, to be totally honest with you, were areas, sports names, because although I came from working in sports, I was terrible at knowing who the footballers were, or I still am, the rugby players or whatever, because I never really watched it. Even though I looked after some of these people who used to come to the shops, I never recognized them. So that's my weak area, is that I'm not a huge sports fan. I love film, I love comedy, I love business, but the sports piece is probably, you know, the weakest link for me. Don't tell anyone.
Now everybody heard this. Maria, so for that 1 month, now the month ended, and then you starting to go into the real world, picking the phone up and start calling people, you know, the people you represented and the people that are booking those that you represented, right? So the training is one word, and that is the actual world out there. How did you adapt, you know, from the training onto the real life, you know?
For me, picking the phone up was selling. That's the bit that I was good at. I'm good at that. I can pick the phone up and speak to somebody, you know, talk to them very quickly, understand if they would be interested or not waste their time if they weren't. So I didn't have a problem with that. And a lot of others did have a problem with that. And I also didn't have a problem with using the systems. We had a customer relationship management system, a CRM. And because I'd used CRMs before, I found that very easy. Some of my colleagues really struggled. So most salespeople are really bad at admin. I love admin and selling, so I'm a weird salesperson. So I was able to go into what I knew. And then, so I focused on the customers, on the customers saying, you know, hi, you know, this is where I'm calling from, trying to find out who organizes your conferences and events. Do you need any speakers? Can I give you some suggestions? Let me send you some information. And I'd spend the morning on the phone and the afternoon doing the admin. Oh. And I found that was the most efficient way for me. And it got me results really fast by being just totally on the phone. And then in the afternoon, all the admin.
Beautiful. Bring me to your first deal, if you still remember. All right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, my first day.
No, your first deal.
Oh, my first deal. Oh, I do.
Yeah.
Well, here's the irony. Here, you're going to laugh now. My first deal was a footballer. He was a football manager, and his name is Laurie McMenemy. He managed, at that time, he was managing Southampton Football Club, one of our clubs in the UK. He was my first booking, even though I don't know about football, so I could still sell people, right? And he wrote me I didn't tell him he was my first booking until afterwards. I didn't want him to know I was inexperienced. And then afterwards, I told him, and he wrote me the most beautiful letter saying what a pleasure it had been to be my first. Wasn't that lovely? So I do remember, and I was so excited to get my first booking. And I think it took me a few weeks to do that, because you're getting the inquiries and you're doing the proposals. And once I got the first one, then the rest were easy.
I think from 0 to 1 is the hardest one, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So bring me to the moment that you got that deal closed, and I think that is the moment that keeping you in the industry for these many years, right? Right. So help us to bring back that feelings that keeping you in the industry for that, you know, 1/4 of the century.
Yeah, I know you're making me sound really old now. Yeah, what keeps me in the industry is the people. The people are fantastic. I've always been interested in the speakers, and the challenge with the speakers, which is so different from every other industry. You know, if you're selling sports shoes, you have a sports shoe and that's it, and there might be a new sports shoe in a year's time, but it's still a shoe. the thing with a speaker is that one minute the speaker is working here and doing this and talking about this, the next they've evolved and they're constantly evolving, they're constantly developing. And so the knowledge, the amount of research you have to keep doing and to keep up with them. And if you're working with a lot of speakers, and I found that stretched me a great deal. But what I was very good at is if somebody came to me with a topic or an objective that they had for a conference, I was able to very quickly in my head, it doesn't work anymore, but I was very quickly in my head to come up with ideas that matched. I was very good at the matchmaking because I understood business. So it helped me to then match with somebody perhaps they might not have thought of outside of their industry who could deliver on that topic.
Beautiful. And Maria, my wife and I interviewed about 1,200 experts in 100 countries. Right. Wow. And then one thing that we, and then these are all successful, accomplished leaders, best-selling authors, like really senior, scientists and researchers, and the people got knighted by the queens and by the queen of your country. So, and then we found out that the secret behind their success is the ability to deal with newness. So they have newness. And they're looking for new things to do in their lives to help them to expand the horizon. Like you said, they're constantly evolving, right? Yeah. That makes you also stretch and constantly evolve yourself also. Some people, because of that evolving or stretching, they will, they break down and they move to the next industry. But you stay in there. You continue to evolve and grow with that. What did you do to make sure that you keep up with that space of change, not only from one individual, from many individuals that you represented the names?
So I think what I did, which is different from many people in the industry, is that no year was the same. Every year I was always looking to change, improve and grow the work that I was doing. And I think that came from my management consultancy time, because the whole point of going into an organization as a management consultant was to improve things. And so I was never, even if I had a great year, that wasn't enough. I had to see, well, what else could we do differently? How could we evolve? And the other thing that I did, and I'm sure that many bureaus do this, but it was something that I did from day one, is that the experts that I was booking, I often asked them their advice and their input into my business, because I was working with the top experts in lots of fields. Why wouldn't I do that? So when, for example, in 2020, you remember the horrible pandemic that we all had to deal with, when that hit, I reached out to a business expert. His name's Kevin Gaskell, in fact, and he's helped businesses who are in trouble and turn them around. And he's the first person I called, and I said, Kevin, I need your help. And together we created a 100-day plan for my business. Which, so I was able to always reach out to people who could help me, because I had access to them. I'd been working with them, and that's a huge advantage, I think, for anybody.
Wow. See, inside of you, you have that DNA of newness inside of you. So you're constantly looking for something new yourself, to refresh, to renew, to improve. And I'm curious to know, so many amazing people, right? What is that from that gentleman, Kevin, that Maria decided to call him the first person, right? And then the two of you work together to come up with the 100 days plan during the pandemic. Why him?
Well, because I knew he'd done it so many times. I've seen he turned around some incredible brands who were really in trouble, and he had just recently released a book where he talked about it and how he had done it, and his formula, if you like, his process. And so I had the book, and it was like serendipity. It was like the universe was telling me, here's your answer, call Kevin. So that's how it happened, really. And then, there are other people that I've worked with who have influenced me, and some who have influenced me and sent me on this journey to work with speakers away from working in the bureau. So I've got to thank those people too, who helped me and guided me and even suggested it. So there's these experts are brilliant, and I think anybody who runs a bureau should definitely lean on the people that you represent, because they can really help you.
Wow, absolutely. for you, right? When you must do something that really set you apart, so that the company that you work for in the industry, and you're new in the industry also, that they gave you big name like Neil Armstrong to represent. Even that, when when they ask you the question, who would you want to represent, and you say that name out, right? And probably for the newcomer, if I'm the boss, I might say, okay, Maria, maybe next 2 years, maybe the next 3 years, but you must do something that, you must do something that beautiful for them to be comfortable and confident to Maria to handle that client. So what did you do?
Well, the thing is, Neil was represented by the bureau that I joined, so he was represented by the organisation. So it wasn't that he was being represented by me. I just became part of the team, and I became one of the people. So I wanted to book him because I wanted to meet him. And I do remember I learnt from the boss as to what was important to Neil. How would I get him to say yes? Because he only spoke about 4 times a year. And he prepared every single speech, was completely tailored, and he never repeated the same speech. And many times he never mentioned, in fact, the speeches I attended, he never mentioned the moon landing, which was fantastic. He always created something unique, a unique journey for people. And so I learned what to do in order to get him to say yes. He had to know that he was adding value. He was way ahead of his time in terms of the speaking industry, that he knew it wasn't about him being the celebrity. It was about him bringing real value and only accepting the events where he was the only person that could deliver that specific value. Loved that about him. I learned a lot from him.
Wow. Did you meet him?
Yeah, I had dinner with him regularly. Yes, he's a wonderful man. We both were passionate about food, so he always let me choose the restaurant, and we're also passionate about little dogs.
I am starting to get jealous with you, Maria. So happy for you, so happy for you. And I think I'm be more happier for you because you started to leave the bureau and build your own practice, your own business. Because that is when that little girl Maria dream becoming real, right? So,
well, now you see how I actually had a couple of businesses before I joined the speaker bureaus. They didn't work out because as an entrepreneur, right, these things happen, right? So I'd already had a couple of businesses. So this wasn't the first time, but I'd learned from those. But yeah, so this is Maria finally having a business. Yeah. And in fact, when I worked for the first bureau, Celebrity Speakers, I was an employee. When I went to the second bureau, I didn't want to be an employee. I wanted to be self-employed, which meant that I could manage my own time, and so I did a different arrangement. So I could bring in my own team, and I could work from home, and I could run my business as I wanted. And then so when then the stepping stone then to run my own business was very much easier.
What made you go to the went to the second bureau and decided to do it on your own term instead of becoming just an employee like other people?
Well, they approached me. So they'd lost a lot of business to me, and they thought actually maybe we should bring Maria in. And when I joined them, they hadn't. This was London Speaker Bureau, who I write about in my book. They didn't have a big international presence as they do now. And what was wonderful was being part of an organisation that was growing very fast. That excited me and allowed me also to help them set up the systems and processes that they would need, because that was what I knew from my management consultancy days. So I helped them to grow. And then when we got to a point where they were rather large, I didn't have as much influence anymore, because if you're trying to change things in a very large organization, it's slow. And I wanted to be agile and nimble. So that's when I decided, right, I want my own business now. And I did it all in agreement and collaboration with London Speaker Bureau. In fact, we partnered in several areas, so that although I had my own company, we still collaborated and partnered, which was fantastic. So I had 20 years with them, which was phenomenal.
So it means that you also running your business for over 20 years.
I ran my own business for 14 years, yeah, and then now another 4 years. So yeah, 18 years, yeah.
And I really like one thing that you put on your profile is that you realize that you could do more, right? And I think that realization is important because that's really transforming a lot of things that happen in front of our eyes, an everyday thing that we've been working, right? When we keep working and working and working and not, and one day you wake up and time flies already, you not realize something new, something that can be turn, turn your life into different directions. So when you say you realize that you could do more, okay, to have then you start to write books, start to share more. What made you come to that realization, Maria?
I suppose COVID accelerated it, but I always had in my mind that there was a lot of people out there offering speaker support in terms of coaching and training, and for me the gap was that real commercial piece, the real business piece. You see, it all comes back to business again, right? And business is from the day one, and still now I'm passionate about business. And so many speakers are I found were very good on stage but very bad at making money or keeping money, should we say, because many got paid well, and the business side was missing. And I could see that the training that was out there wasn't really doing it, because a lot of people who go out and train speakers don't actually understand the speaking industry. They don't understand who the bookers are, what's going on, what industry we're really in even. And so I was frustrated by that. So my intention was always at some point to move into the training side, and I was doing a little bit on the side, if you like, as part of my bureau work. And then when COVID hit, and I had so many speakers that I'd been working with for years come to me and say, look, our business has collapsed, help, what do we do? It was the opportunity for me to say, okay, let me work with you while my team works with the clients that have current events and manage those, and I'll work with you and support you guys. And I then found, actually, I can do this really well. What I found that I could do is I could do things quickly. And the other frustration I had with a lot of training is that somebody will sign you up for a year program or a 6-month program, or it's going to take all of these sessions and it's going to take all of this money. And actually, it really doesn't have to. I could turn people's businesses around in 1 or 2 one-to-one sessions, where we could literally turn it into a commercial and thriving business. So I love doing that. I love helping people make money. I love it when somebody writes to me and says, Maria, I managed to pay for my house because of all the work we've done together. Or, Maria, I've managed to do this. Or, I've sent my children to private school. Or, we had an extra holiday. Or, I bought a new car. Or, I love that. That makes me really excited.
And thanks for doing that. Thanks for making the understanding of the industry and now transforming into the training and the coaching to help people to, find the edge into the industry also. So Maria, from running the business into writing into the training, it's totally different also. So it's quite different in skills. And how did you beautifully do that and make your book become #1 internet, best-selling also?
So with the training, it's interesting you say that, because when I started back in the day, when I started my very first job in retail management, one of the things that was really important was we had to learn about the products. And so I used to spend a lot of time training my staff on the products. And especially, I would do it for my full-time team. And on a Saturday morning, I had a Saturday team that would come in because we'd be very busy. And I'd have them come in half an hour early and I'd train them. So I had been doing that when I was in that business for 5 years. And then when I went into management consultancy, I was working with clients on the programs, and they needed somebody to do training. And I said, well, I've done some training in my retail management. And so they taught me how to lead group training sessions. And I then did some of that. And I found that I've always had that interest in teaching people things. So when I had my own team as well, and we were setting up systems, CRM systems, or we were doing marketing campaigns, whatever, I tended to be the one teaching them how to do things. I love to learn it myself, and then I teach them. So anything I brought into my business, I needed to understand it first, even if I didn't end up doing it. But I wanted to understand it because I'm a bit of a control freak. So you know, when we started podcasting, I had to understand all the back end of the podcast, all the how do you do it, how you do everything, before one of my team then ended up doing that for me. But I wanted to know all of the pieces, and one of the things I learned as a management consultant, which was so valuable, was never to have just one person in your team that knows how to do everything. Always have somebody, so that if that person is ill or leaves, you've always got at least one, if not two people. So I always had my people learning from each other as well. So if I had my social media person, then learning from my bookkeeping person, and my bookkeeping person, so they were extending their skills as well. And I knew how to do it all as well, but I didn't. I let them do it as long as I knew how to, if they had a problem. Wow. I don't know if I've answered your question. I haven't mentioned the book. That's a whole nother story there, huh? So tell me to stop if I talk too much.
I have time.
You have time. I wrote my book in 2020 originally, because obviously there was a bit of time there available, and I was experiencing it. And I wasn't happy with the book that I wrote, and I wrote it and I put it away and I didn't touch it. I then got involved a few years later with the Speaker Awards and Speaking Summit here in the UK. And the Speaker Awards recognises speakers for their, their show reels, for their websites, for their speeches, whether virtual, in person, their storytelling, their thought leadership. It's a great, great event. And I got involved in that. And one of the sponsors of the awards was a publisher, or is a publisher. And he said to me, Maria, I'm looking at your content. I'm looking at what you do. Where's the book? So I said to him, well, I've written the book. Let me send it to you and tell me what you think. And I didn't say anything. And he came back to me and he said, it's good, but it's the wrong book. And I said, I know. And the reason I knew it was the wrong book is because it's been done before. I wrote a how-to book that had been done before. What I didn't write was my specific experience, which is where the Bookability Formula came from. And when he and I planned out my book, it was very much about what I had learned in the Speaker Bureau, as opposed to the generic stuff. And, it had better stories in it, better structure, and a formula for bookability, a formula, what the 1% most book speakers did in my bureau to be the most book speakers. So it was based on real data, and that made it a lot stronger. So I'm so glad I didn't publish the first book, because other people had written that book. Other experts had written it, but nobody could write the Bookability Formula because it's my formula.
Wow. Maria, I have to pause here and get back in 2020 when you first wrote the book, right? So you spent hours, days, and weeks and months writing it. And a normal person in a normal circumstance would just get it out there, right? So you pause for a second and you say, hey, if this is not working, there's something missing in here. So you hold on to that one for the right moment until a publisher friend asks you to send the book, and you start to fine tune it and make it your version of the story, your own formula that no one else in the world can do that. What make you decide not to release all of that stress and that work and that you've been having completing the book, but hold on to that a little bit more?
Yeah, I just had a gut feeling that it wasn't the right book. It just in my gut, I thought it's not right. And by that time, I had actually had the beginnings of the Bookability Formula, because I'd already been studying the most book speakers and why they were bookable, but I hadn't fully formed it. And I made the mistake that a lot of speakers make, actually, and there's a strong lesson here. I wrote the book too early, before my thinking was really fully formed and my way of expressing it was fully formed. So I didn't have a unique angle. on you know, you could have taken my previous book and I could pull out several books on my bookshelf that are the same book. But now the Bookability Formula, there isn't another book like it.
Wow. When you say that you haven't got your thinking, I'm writing the note here so you see me up and down in my head. Okay, so your thinking was not formed, right? So
Yeah.
so because it was formed, you say, and you say so. So how do we know that is when our thinking is finally formed and ready for making a decision, though?
Well, as a speaker, in a way, it's a lot easier because you can speak about it regularly. I mean, of course, I was talking about it when I was doing my coaching and getting reactions and feedback. And you can also put it out on, you know, test ideas out on social media as well and get feedback. But as a speaker, you could deliver a keynote which more or less is the summary of your thinking and your thought and your vision and your big idea, and you'll get a reaction because that's the audience you're writing for anyway. And if those people are if it resonates, they will come and tell you it resonates, and they'll tell you exactly what resonates. So it's testing it out, really. And then you get to the point, and this is what happened to me. I got to the point where I was testing it out, and then people were using the content as if it was their own. So I thought, okay, now I have to write it. Now I have to write it because it's my IP, right? Yeah.
So if now it's your IP, your book, your baby. I know the next question is not fair for you, but if we ask you to pick a chapter that you like most out of all chapters there, so what is that you are going to share with us?
I think the chapter, I probably wouldn't, I like them all equally, but the one that I think is the most important is the first one. It's the reason it's the first chapter, and that's relevance, you know, to be relevant to a paying market, you know, where you're dealing with and talking about a problem that is pressing now, that it's current now. So it's relevant would be it's the first element of the formula, and it's the most important one. It's the one that the most speakers fall down on when they're trying to be commercial, in that they want to talk about their passion or they want to talk about what interests them, instead of saying, well, hang on, how does that passion answer a problem? How is it relevant today?
Has this book been any progress to translate into Vietnamese in my market?
I know if there's anybody out there who is a publisher and publishes in Vietnamese, I'd be delighted to get my publisher to talk to you. So not at the moment, but yeah, I'd love to. Absolutely,
I would love to be that, you know, person of helping, of supporting, and I think it's benefit for me too. I want to learn about your formula. You know, you've been having a lot of amazing people out there with Bookability. You know, I'm all ears for that. You know.
Thank you.
And Maria, you mentioned one word that we love hearing in here is the word "I think." And my wife and I, we've been on the quest to help people to improve their ability to think, because we believe that our thinking has a lot of impact these days that make it diminish instead of, you know, like improving. And every conversation like this is a way for us to help people to improve their ability to think. Okay? So by asking this question, Maria, how have you been growing your ability to think over the years?
Oh my goodness, that's a really good question. I think, see, look, I'm thinking, I've always read, and I love reading. So that's one of the things that I've always done. And I also love learning. So for me, there's always a book, there's several books always on the go. So I'm always reading something. And then I'm always trying to learn something new. So with the advent of AI, I'm having a wonderful time because I'm learning lots of things about AI. And I have advisors as well that I use who help me, who are experts. So I've got 2 experts in AI that I rely on to help me grow, and that obviously helps my thinking. And I have 2 people who help me with LinkedIn. I have people who help me with website, people who help me with also what's going on in the market and understanding that. So I suppose for me it's just constantly surrounding myself with people who are far more expert than I am in different areas, and they make me think differently about things. They challenge me. So I've always been challenged by people. So especially in the speaking industry, because I've been working with some incredible experts that I've represented, they've always challenged me and they've stretched me. And I've always felt like the least intelligent person in the room. And I like that.
2 months ago, my wife and I acquired a website called sustainabilitymind.com. So it's like you build a sustainability mindset, right? And the reason for that is when we talk to amazing people out there, they always want to do something that can be sustainable for other people. So what you are doing at the moment is to help speaking, speakers to build a sustainable, future for them, the business and stuff like that, right? And also for your clients, because they need to bring somebody onto the organization, the events, to make something that lasting also. So they also want to have something sustainable for themselves. And so if you are the business owner and you run in that one, we want to ask you, if you think of a definition in your own word about a sustainability mind. So what is that to you, Maria?
Gosh, I suppose the most important word there is curiosity. Always remain curious. And I think the older you get, the more you understand that. I think when you're very young, I remember when I was very young, I thought I knew everything. I didn't know anything. I still don't know anything. So I think it's that curiosity, to always be curious rather than making assumptions. And often we jump to conclusions, we jump to assumptions. So be curious and question things, especially now when there's so much fake news and, so many things that we need to be challenging. So yeah, always be curious.
Beautiful. 2 last questions. All right. If we can travel time, you and me will go into your room when you were little. You play with the cash register and wanted to become a businesswoman and you're running the business in the future. Now you are coming with me to that room. We sit down together next to her, to that little Maria. All right. And you're going to tell her about the future of running business, of meeting amazing people, of whatever that you can tell that little Maria. So what would you tell her?
I would tell her, and it's something that I live by now, and I probably didn't all of my life, especially when I was little. So do the right thing, even if no one is watching.
Wow.
I would tell her that.
And explain a little bit more, which.
So I think sometimes we can be tempted to do something which maybe isn't the right thing. We might say something wrong. We might do something wrong. We might take a shortcut. And it might be something silly, or it might be something bigger. There are examples, but I'm not going to share them. of mistakes I made, especially when you're a teenager or when you're a younger person, and especially to my poor parents. When I was a teenager, I was quite rebellious, and so I think it's about just doing good things rather than perhaps being a bit less selfish sometimes, I think, because I was a little bit, when I became a teenager, I was a little bit selfish, I think we all go through that. But I think I was a very difficult teenager, if I'm honest.
Well, I think when you connect all the dots, right, you start to love life a lot more, appreciate life a lot more. And everybody will walk their own path of life, right? That's along the path. There's a lesson learned for everybody. And the last question, and I'm trying to think of the last question because 2026 is coming, okay? And I think you have a gift from life to do a lot of beautiful things, meeting a lot of beautiful and wonderful people on earth, right? So you learn from them, they learn from you, and if you pick a skill that you think everyone on earth, if I can say everyone on earth, let's say a lot of people on earth need to master, so that they can live their life happily, like fulfilling and successful. So Maria, what is that one single skill do you think that each of us need to focus on 2026 forward?
Well, you might be surprised at this because it sounds really simple, but I think we're not very good at it. All of us, including me sometimes, a lot of the time, learning to listen, really listen. And I think sometimes we're bad at that.
All right. I say the two last question, but because you opened that, learning to listen, I would love to pick 2 more minutes with you for that question. Okay. If we want to become a better listener in your own experience, how are we doing that?
I think too many people go into a conversation already having decided what the outcome is going to be, and therefore they steer it. And my experience of working in a bureau, this is the experience I've had, is that often when I met a new speaker, I would ask a question and they would just talk at me. And I would come after, when they came up for air and stopped talking at me, delivering a speech, I would then say, you haven't answered my question, because they were so prepared with what they wanted to tell me and what they wanted me to hear. But the thing is, if they're not answering my question, I'm not listening anymore either. So it's that ability to be more interested in the other person and their point of view rather than what you need to say. And I think we all struggle sometimes that when we're in a conversation, rather than listening to the other person's point of view, we're waiting for the space to tell our bit.
Thank you for sharing. Beautiful. Maria, thank you so much for spending your afternoon to join our program and share your amazing journey. Beautiful journey. Okay. And I would love to meet you in person, have a cup of tea together. And it would be wonderful to also have your book translated into our language so that we can help people to understand more about your bookability formula, because I think that is for more than just speaking industry, and my feeling is that there's a lot more in there for all of us to read and then to learn from your experience, not just speakers, right? And if you see your parents, make sure that you give them a lot of hugs and kisses. For us, we love them for for everything. Okay.
Thank you so much for being a wonderful host. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a beautiful day, and I see you again soon. Bye bye.
Bye bye.